Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would talk about the FIROS 6. This is a vehicle I just spaded, and it was from the Rocket Storm event. It's one of those that I kind of put off for a long time because, to be honest, I just didn't really work with it. It isn't my type of vehicle that usually I would play. I generally prefer scouts, which can be a bit aggressive, but more kind of passive scouting and then kind of pushing forward and then defending the team from like counterattacks and stuff like that. Whereas the FIROS 6 is much more out and out aggression, trying to get your team as much of an advantage as possible. But there are certain things that kind of hold it back from doing that until you get some of the modifications and then also some of the factors for this vehicle itself. So what the FIROS 6 is very similar to some of the other light tanks that you find from Italy. So for example, the Fiat 6614, this is exactly the same chassis, but the 6614 has the 106mm recoilless rifle, whereas the FIROS 6 has a FIROS 6 launcher. This is a rocket launcher that has access to a bunch of ammunition in it. It also gets some reloads for it, basically 2 sets of reloads, so you get a lot of rockets for this machine, and generally they actually work pretty well. The rockets themselves are this ARF-XM3 rocket. They're heat rockets, so they pen up to 250mm, so most vehicles that you're going to fight, you can just kind of spam them at them, and then eventually they will go through and they will damage, and that's generally what you want to do with it. The only issue with these rockets is they have an extreme drop-off at the start of when you fire them, so they lose a lot of kind of height in the first kind of 200 meters. So whenever you use this thing, what you have to do is you have to basically use your scroll wheel or whatever you have it set to be able to change your sight distance control so it's sat at about 200 or 300 meters instead, so it's a lot easier to aim the rockets. Also, you can just kind of spam fire them until you run out, and then the reload is around about 30 seconds, which isn't great, but the mobility of the vehicle is good enough so that you can reposition while that's going on. In this vehicle, I never actually got to a point where I used all of its rockets. There were times where I was pretty close, but most of the time, because of the hyper-aggressive nature of the vehicle, I would get into a point where basically I would just end up dying anyway before getting, in a position to actually, kind of carry the game just in a single setup. So the vehicle itself has this big launcher on the top of it. It only has 5 degrees of gun depression, which can be a little bit annoying, but the cool thing about it also is the optic of the vehicle is right next to where the rockets are. This means that you can hide the chassis and basically hit other vehicles with the rockets while hiding everything else. Now, that doesn't mean you're invulnerable. If people actually hit your rockets in your launcher, you will explode because it overpressures you. If somebody lands artillery slightly next to you, and by slightly I mean like 30 meters away, you will also die. If people do it with bombs as well, you will also die. This vehicle is incredibly fragile in terms of actual armor, only has 8mm of it, so that means that the overpressure from the rockets is really easy to do, and even I've had it where people have shot kind of APHE at the actual launcher, missed it, and hit its like mount, and somehow that has overpressured my crew, even though it should pass through since it's only 8mm. So this vehicle is really not survivable. So what you got to do is you have to be the first person to fire off the rockets. You want to mesmerize the enemy with the amount of rockets that are going in, and then from there you can kind of control the situation. So always just kind of spam, like just as you see the enemy, and then, you can deal with whatever happens later on as it comes. The vehicle does get some other factors which do make it quite fun to play. It's a light tank, so it gets scouting. So even in situations where you feel like you can't get the rockets on target, at least you're able to scout. It does also get smoke grenades. They are rank 4 though, which absolutely sucks. So repositioning is pretty good, and also it's a super light vehicle. Like, it's less than 9 tons. It's got a nice little engine. It's got a good transmission. The good thing about all these Italian light tanks of the mid-tiers, they have just really good mobility. So repositioning is incredibly fun in them. If you haven't played these light tanks for Italy, by the way, highly recommend them. Like the Orbal 74, the Fiat 6614, the C13 T90, the R3T106. All of these vehicles are incredibly fun, including stuff like the M18 and also all of the other ones. The only one I'd say which probably isn't as fun is probably the BTR-80A. That one kind of has an issue, but everything else is quite nice. Now, the negatives of the FIROS. We already talked about its survivability. Its survivability is non-existent. It's probably one of the worst in the game. And then the other thing is the fact that the targeting speed on this launcher is absolutely terrible. Basically, it doesn't have a lot of horizontal guidance speed. Even after getting all the modifications, you can get it up to, if you have an ace crew, 10 degrees per second. And then on the vertical, you can get it to 6 degrees per second. That is awful. It is no way to defend itself against casts apart from smokes, and it is no way to really defend itself against really anything. And because of the fact that the launcher is incredibly slow, and also bouncy, by the way, that's another thing to also mention. You basically have to be in the aggressive position every time to be able to catch people out and cause the advantage. So on a lot of maps, this just doesn't really work very well. Like, it's just not one of the vehicles that actually suits them. Now, luckily, this thing has a great vehicle as a backup, the M47-105, which is an amazing vehicle. It's one of those where they've buffed it a bunch of times, gave it a better reverse, gave it better gun depression, and generally it will actually do a big job of the carrying of this lineup. So with the FIROS 6, what you want to do is you want to play it hyper aggressive, you want to get 1 or 2 or 3 kills, get a cap, and then just keep banging on with it, and then, transition either into the M47 or transition into the F-34 or the IL-28 to be able to, annihilate either cast threats or deal with stuff on the ground. And that works really well. That is basically how you play this vehicle. But it means that as a solo carry, unless you get super lucky or people don't realize you're there, or you get very specific maps, such as that new kind of, I think it's an Italian map, where it has like the stadium in it, like the Colosseum, you can just like run really aggressively on the left-hand side because there's no way of countering it, and then just, rocket people as they come out. But that map's kind of fundamentally broken, so you can do that with like anything. It's just with this thing, it's really easy to do. But with certain other maps, like you can do that too and, have a bit of fun with it, but generally you're not going to be able to carry as easily as you would the standard medium tank. So for me, did I enjoy my time in this thing? I'd say yeah. Like overall, I did. It was frustrating at times because I always just thought, well, I could just be using kind of like the standard one, which also doesn't have a lot of these problems. But that, and War Thunder in general, something that has to be understood is sometimes you need something that's a little bit different. So we played 38 battles in this thing to spade it. It did feel longer than that. Just because we ended up having to play like very long battles to try and win games. We had a 58% win rate, which is incredibly positive. And then also we had 49 ground kills, 0 air kills, unsurprisingly, and then 38 deaths. So we respawned 38 times and died 38 times. So I didn't survive a single game in this vehicle, which even in other vehicles which are incredibly kind of lightly armored or, generally not seen as survivable, that is kind of unheard of. So there wasn't a single battle where I played in this thing where I didn't die. Now, as I said, the good thing was I was able to kind of play the M47 as well and do really well in that. And then also the F-84 and the IL-28 and kind of carry from the air. But that kind of shows the thing about this. You have to play hyper aggressively, you hammer targets, you get 1 or 2 kills, and then you transition into the rest of your lineup to be able to get some nice games in. And if you do that, you can have a great time. If you can't do that, you're going to struggle. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.